September 27th, 2023. In Genshin Impact, Fontaine, the Nation of Justice, was as fresh as the water flowing throughout its countless valleys and landmarks. To jump on top of this train, well underneath technically, the absolute mad lads over at Hoyoverse decided to pull the Sumeru and drop a whole opposite area within a single update afterwards. This place is the Fortress of Meropide, a place that is not to be considered a prison but a gathering area for exiles. It brings morality, anarchy, story and technology to the table, which any Fontainian would love. Grab some Mondstadtian, Liyue, Inazuma, Sumeruan, Fontainian, Natlan, and Snezhnaya water, and then get ready because the Iudex Neuvillette is taking it away. This is why the Fortress of Meropide is a compelling duality.
The Fortress of Meropide may seem like a prison, but it should in fact be regarded as a gathering place for exiles. I will arrange false charges against you so that you may secretly investigate inside the fortress.
I think it is incredibly appropriate, specifically for this video, to explain what kind of influence I'm under to be wild enough in order to conceptualize this video, let alone create it. Well, let me explain one main thing, why I deem this incredibly small area as important enough to cover within its own video. I'll make it brief, so don't worry. Firstly, not to burst anyone's bubbles, as I love every expansion within this game, but this place has more playable characters than 4 of the 6 expansions combined. Dragonspine and the Chasm have more combined just with each other, but Enkanomiya, Girdle of the Sands, Chenyu Vale, and the Sea of Bygone Eras all have less than 2 playable characters within their sub-regions. Let alone the amount of playable characters you see within the area in general, including Linny, Lynette, Fremine, Tartaglia, Wriothesley, Siegeway, Neuvillette, Clorend, and who knows, maybe that one really bossy guy will become one as well. The place also has its own unique aesthetic, being clockwork, which is surprisingly not really shown to a decent extent elsewhere besides the robotic enemies of all types within the game as a whole. And overall, I think this is justified now. Time to get a move on, as yapping session 1 of 5 is now finished.
He does have a plan. What could it be?
After being away from the sunlight for so long, even the terrifying depths of the sea start to feel like home.
I have to...
Like I said, this place has got a real unique aesthetic, not only with the clockwork aesthetic that is undeniably compelling if you enjoy the mechanical vibe Fontaine as a whole has going on, but with the duality this place provides to the nation. I'm arguing why it's compelling, and why it's a duality, remember? Archi, or Pneuma and Ossia, is the power system of Fontaine. Most of you would know that. Now look at the colours of the fortress. See anything? I sure do. It's why I intentionally brought it up. Notice the yellow to orange palette of this unnecessarily intimidating dungeon, and then look at the bluish, cyanish colour scheme of the rest of the nation. These colours are also shown to the opposing energy types making the arcade, giving me a nagging feeling that the fortress intentionally contrasts the nation to help emphasise more of, well, the nation. Even the white buildings and dark shadows of the fortress, or the ascended plate the nation lies on while the fortress is descended. It's a part of Fontaine, and the fortress's role in all this both creates duality, but that duality is compelling. The compelling nature comes from the mystery. While it's mostly used within the storyline, the use of multiple floors in order to compensate for the smaller horizontal size is not only enjoyable and confusing, but creates a slight feeling of discovery, especially once you notice the random Fontainian caves in the outskirts of the fortress. The different floors within this place help hide teleporters in areas until you get there, or if you intentionally browse through the layers, it's likely that the place will pique the player's interest. Using a lot of underwater mechanics, these caves host small amounts of loot, as well as giving some variety to the highly technical atmosphere of the place. This extreme amount of tech with a small amount of nature also contrasts Fontaine's cities and courts that are surrounded by and built upon nature. Now, somewhat like the why section, I'll be drawing some similarities to other expansions of the map, not only validating this video's existence once again, but helping to draw some more things out of the place to talk about overall. Firstly, have you been to Enkanomiya? If you haven't, or you have and you love it, I'd not only recommend watching my awesome video on it, but listening in closely. You see, a big part of Fontaine's lore is that the baptismal bishops roam the place, similar to their artificial cousins, the Melazines. The reason I'm bringing lore up within this environment section is a parallel that helps push my idea of duality. Not only does the arcade system undeniably parallel the White Knight and Evernight mechanics of Enkanomiya, but the existence of the fortress helps parallel something else, the environment. When swapping between these two statuses of the world, the sky around the player will change, going between a blue hue and a lighter, wider and slightly yellow one. This is shown within those energy systems, as the deep blue contrasts the light yellow. My point is, Fontaine is Evernight, and the Fortress of Meropide is White Knight. This irony is that the safer, lighter one is now underground and more dangerous. Comment diddly dark dungeon or something so I know you heard my yapping fest. Please, I just came up with that name in 5 seconds. The existence of the Vishaps in Fontaine's lore, as well as the Sea of Bygone Eras and the supposed second entrance to Enkanomiya, is why I brought this up. Vishaps went to Fontaine for a reason, and perhaps it's because of the duality that Enkanomiya offers, and Fontaine replicates. That's why and how the fortress creates duality in terms of environment. I'd argue all of this makes the place quite compelling as well. There's even more landmarks here than in the goddamn Sea of Bygone Eras, whether it's the production zone, Pancration Ring, cafeteria, boy I love it all. But let me address an elephant in the room. It's big, like an elephant. The Fortress of Meropide is simultaneously quite lame, ironically for all the same reasons as Fontaine's actual sub-region expansion, Remuria, or the Sea of Bygone Eras. This place is criticised for 3 things: simplicity, smaller size, and repetition. All of these things can be shown within the fortress, being arguably worse in all fields besides simplicity. While the fortress has repetitive rooms and buildings that lack in irritating to find loot, with an incredibly small size overall, the Sea of Bygone Eras has repetitive nature and a lack of tech with an overbearing amount of easy to obtain loot due to the small size. Maybe Fontaine just has a problem with expansions, to be honest. I just wanted to address that yes, this place is very repetitive, simple, and needlessly small to the point where it really isn't a sub-region. But you know, sub-area, sub-region, subway, all the same to me. I still think it's compelling. Let's get a move on, gang.
They're here.
Just like I said.
What happened?
Huh.
You're just in time. But be ready to run.
The gameplay in this place, like a lot of places in Genshin Impact, is arguably one of the weaker parts of the area. This is due to the place existing primarily for the story surrounding it, being Acts 3 and 4 of the Fontaine Archon quests. We can discuss the occurrences within this quest though, I guess. I've done it in other area-based videos. One of the main mechanics I can recall is making the widgets within the production zone. It's a pretty bare-bones mechanic that you can tell was exclusively made for a little more interaction within the quest playtime, considering there aren't any enemies to fight or anything for the most of it. This is another reason why people find the place so repetitive and boring, the gameplay. The secondary and last mechanic is quite literally the most basic thing ever, much like the other one. Before that, this one is like Simon Says, but with a lot of hitting in order to bring that aforementioned lack of variety to a minimum. It takes place in the Pancration Ring, being a cool fighting ring that gives people a mysterious beverage that is undeniably suspicious. A lot of gameplay otherwise is just walking and talking, and I can't even think of a third word that rhymes. Comment if you think of one, because I think this is just a result of the lacking amount of content. Womp womp. Because of this lack thereof, I might just cry in this here. Wait. I need to mention the compelling part one last time through a perspective of immersion. I'll bring this up in the story and characters section as well, but despite the mechanic's boring nature, the fact they're both committed to either machinery or hostility helps make it more compelling due to just how consistent the place is with the story surrounding it. Unfortunately, despite all this, the mechanics are not compelling like the map and storyline is, nor does it present much duality either. All I can say is, it's small. This has been the shortest section in one of my videos ever, including intros, probably. Comment Risley because we're about to bring up the gun for 5 milliseconds.
If you think fear can control everything, well then, terrify me.
The story is absolutely cooked in this place, for the best and for the worst. Let's cover the negatives first, this time in order to get a smooth transition to the conclusion. Firstly, it's slow as hell. Much like the other 2 categories, the story is incredibly repetitive and simple. Well, that's what most people said. Overall, you could dumb down Act 3 especially to just doing the same thing every day, sleeping in and out as you finish the same chores and slowly approach your ultimate goal, figuring out what the hell happened to Childs. Yeah, it's repetitive. Yeah, it's slow. Yeah, it isn't great pacing when compared to everything else, but damn, it's immersive. And negative stuff is over now, time to glaze the place. Firstly, this immersion helps it be compelling when the story is effectively an investigation. It's very different, yeah, and that makes it polarizing. However, I love it, whether you agree or not. The Fortress's main players in the story are Childe, Wriothesley, Siegeween, Linny, Lynette, and Freminet. All these characters follow a characterized duality by definition. Childe half portrays the Traveller in Liyue, Wriothesley and Siegeween are incredibly confusing, seeming good then bad then good again, as well as the siblings all being hidden for Tui. Therefore, they all follow the law of verisimilitude to an extent, which I personally believe means that they in turn follow duality. The Fortress is simply filled with it, through environment and now character. Now, the compelling part is the mystery I spoke of. This investigation structure is incredibly interesting. It uses duality to its advantage, focusing on unveiling the second halves of the various characters, similar to the drama that keeps you on the edge of your seat. Just compare it to the Sub-Zero's festival arc in Sumeru's Act 2, repetitive discovery on an interesting drop of lore unfolding around you, though I will say it did a better job. There's a clear difference in the reception from the community in both situations, Sumeru's being significantly better received. The environment uses the duality to shock the player into paying full attention from the very beginning, and the use of floors, elevators, and even those mechanics keep the mechanical, unique nature of the place intact no matter what you were doing. I just love how the characters from Acts 1 and 2 return, boosting the story consistency and quality. It's compelling. The Fortress really does feel like a gathering place, for exiles and normal citizens of Fontaine alike. While the first act is a heart-throbbing detective drama, the second of the two is more lore and climax-based, involving Arlecchino and building tension from two areas that'll eventually meet a meeting point. Arlecchino's involvement with the surface simultaneously being paralleled by the siblings' involvement within the Fortress, one being intimidating whilst the other is bonding, duality. This is all incredibly similar to Sumeru Desert, like I hinted at in the environment section. The initially hostile atmosphere being subverted by the close bonds, friendships, and more all help create this familiar feeling, but I do prefer the desert. Also, back to the topic of Arlecchino, you could argue Wriothesley is a straight parallel to her, a figure of power giving the place an overarching villain, both of them being revealed as good people, or at least not full-blown antagonists. Duality again. That's all though, I just can't talk too much about such a small little place, you know? Here's a conclusive, cohesive, crazy recap of everything discussed in this video, considering it's probably very all over the place. Let's be honest. Firstly, in the environment, the place is contrasting with the rest of the nation due to its high frequency of mechanical areas while lacking normal nature, while Fontaine does the opposite. On top of this, the colour scheme yellow is the opposite to blue, giving more signs that this place is intentionally opposing to the rest of the nation, also backed up by my pneuma and omnia, also known as the arcade energy system. Not only does it exist, but due to Fontaine's close relationship with Enkanomiya and the similarities with the very opposing Knight systems and Arcade system, I'd always argue that the Fortress is like the White Knights of Fontaine's Evernight. If that makes sense to you, then take it as more reason to believe that whatever the hell I just yapped about is deliberate, and the place does serve as a duality. The mechanics create immersion, both assisting in making the place more compelling as a complement to the storyline and environment, but also helping enforce the contrast due to the aforementioned complementary role it has in relation to said environment. It pushes the technological part of it, which was just established to be one of the primary driving factors of difference between the two. They also give a little variety to the gameplay to help compel and keep the player engaged, so that's always appreciated, regardless of quality. In terms of story, each character included within the storyline has an individual narrative of duality, being these siblings' initially secret association with the Fatui, Childe's chains of heart, or the faking thereof, as well as Wriothesley and Siegeween's constant supposed switch of allegiance, as well as the reveal that they know of the Traveller's scheming the whole time. On top of this, the mystery slowly being uncovered, much like Acts 1 and 2 of Fontaine's Archon quests, very efficiently engages the player and makes them think, which is incredibly important for something like Acts 3 and 4, which are otherwise dry. Mostly 3 though. The return of certain characters also keeps the player engaged as well, helping to immerse them into the world of not only the Fortress but Fontaine as a whole. It's just got a very nice alien and foreign yet intriguing and contrasting vibe to it all, which I love. I can't ignore the glaring flaws, but overall the place is compelling to me, and serves as a very effective duality of sorts to the player, once again to me. I love you all, and the video is pretty much over. If you enjoyed it, show some love by liking, subscribing, sharing, joining the membership, or maybe even baking some Tartaglia-themed cookies. Regardless, I'll see you later. Bye bye! Oh, and I'm gonna cover Fontaine next, so get ready for the nation of water, justice, all the Furina fanboys, and Neuvillette fangirls, and Wriothesley fangirls, and Chlorend fanboys, and yeah, I don't know where I'm going this. Bye!
Welcome, one and all, to the Opera Epiclese. Watch carefully now. Blink and you might miss it.